Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest. And today I have with me Margaret Hunter. She is American Water's Engineering Manager of the Planning Program and Water Conservation. And we're going to talk a little bit about water conservation for utilities, the principles behind that, and the article that she contributed in the February 2021 issue of Water and Waste Digest. So, Margaret, thank you so much for being on the call. We appreciate you taking the time and, of course, for contributing such a cool article for us to dig a little more deeply into here.
Thanks, Bob. Happy to be here this morning.
Yeah, so the February issue, you had contributed this article with some principles for utilities to consider when they're looking to address issues of water conservation. The first of them discuss kind of understanding the consequences of not thinking about this issue. Could you elaborate on why that is a critical piece of the water conservation puzzle that utilities should be solving?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. It's of critical importance to water utilities. As you know, water is the most precious, finite resource on Earth, and it's essential to life, our economy, and our environment. And we really need to be stewards as utility representatives of this precious resource because frankly, in areas of water stress, especially, water efficiency is a way that we can be more sustainable long term for future generations and give our communities that resilience that they need for future growth and or redevelopment.
Yeah. Well, and we hear for Water and Waste Digest, we hear about these issues of water scarcity, and mostly we hear about it for places out west. But I think it's also something that we've noted before too, that water scarcity doesn't just mean less access to water. It could be your water isn't clean enough, or you can't clean the water. There's a lot of issues that come with water scarcity that I think tie directly into this whole water conservation issue of trying to make every drop count.
Yeah, it's a really great point, Bob. You have to think about it as water quality and water quantity. It's not always just a quantity issue. And in some cases, we have saltwater intrusion, we have environmental contamination. There's all different kinds of issues that can happen beyond just depleting aquifers and more limited supplies. So it's definitely something very important to consider everywhere.
Yeah. So, you had mentioned a couple of these principles, like I had said, and one of them was demonstrating good water conservation, essentially leading by example. How has American Water taken this approach with some of its systems, and what can other utilities take away from that and use for themselves? Are there principles within that principle that they can apply essentially?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely. American Water is applying this in many ways, leading with education on our websites, partnering with other entities like EPA Water Sense. Additionally, tailoring specific programs in certain water systems that we serve where depending on what issues they have there in the communities. Like I mentioned before, it might be saltwater intrusion, limited water withdrawals because of other challenges. But we've designed tailored programs to help accommodate this. In particular, for example, in one of our Eastern region systems, we used a data-driven plan to develop a program leveraging online tools, customer education, and technology like smart irrigation controllers to help customers be more efficient with their irrigation usage.
Yeah, and I mean, on that topic of technology, there have been so many advancements, I feel like, in the past 5 to 10 years that have really changed the trajectory of data and whatnot in the water sector. What advancements have been like kind of the biggest in that regard? And how can utilities measure conservation within their own control? And then how does that extend then to measuring what's within the customer's control as well?
Yeah, really, really good points. There's a lot of things that we can do, and technology is ever changing and advancing, which is really exciting, especially in an area of water efficiency like this. AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, is one really amazing way to kind of do both. Look at the supply side and demand side management opportunities for not just the customers, but also the utilities. With tools like AMI, we have more frequent consumption data. We have the ability to monitor and detect leaks on the water utility side or on the customer service side. And additionally, it helps with behavioral efficiency because as customers can see that information, they can react to it. Kind of like your cell phone minutes, I'm going to go over plan, or oh my gosh, I'm using too much water. Maybe I should adjust something, or I left the irrigation system on and maybe I should have shut it off. So different things like that can really help align the customer and the utility with better information.
Hmm. Yeah, I recognize that a lot too. I do hear when I think about this, I always think and lean toward that smart water element, and oftentimes it is that AMI, the metering type of thing. I think one of the things that I've also heard about too is just the remote controlling of valves and pressure zones and that kind of a thing to aid in that as well, to make sure that for areas that are, say you have a whole subdivision that's just like, this is a vacation subdivision that people do not live in, you can change the pressure up to make sure that you're maintaining in equilibrium and providing better efficiency of your whole system.
Yeah, one of the technologies that we're excited about to implement more, and we have been using in our footprint, is acoustic monitoring for leak detection. Using that technology to listen for leaks and then help improve our finding, detecting is the hard part, right? And then going and fixing them. So
Yeah, yeah, that's always the hard part, is locating the problem so that you can solve it head on. Because sometimes it's just like, we know there's a problem, we just don't know where it is. So, that, like you had mentioned too, that this aspect of getting the customer involved too, and customer education. You talked about giving them the tools to see their usage, similar to like a cell phone plan. What are some other parts of that messaging puzzle and ways that you can communicate more directly with your customers to share this information on water conservation and ensure that they are also trying to make the most with what they're getting from the water system?
yeah, that's a great question, and it's so important that we have that customer connection. I think where you can, it's a great idea to do regular surveying, particularly in areas of water stress where you need to design a tailored program to a community. You want to make sure those messages resonate with the customers. And then additionally, I think some of the messaging that is near and dear to my heart is around the terms water conservation and water efficiency. There's a distinction between them in the industry, where conservation tends to be somewhat of a negative connotation of doing with less. And when we have drought restrictions, we go into a conservation mandate, and things like that. But water efficiency is really not about doing with less. It's about using this precious resource wisely and as efficiently as possible, and being able to be sustainable for future generations. So I think, incorporating that into the messaging and helping customers see how technology can help, some of it can be behavioral recognition of how we're using water. But it's also, hey, you don't have to sacrifice your green lawn. We can just teach you and help share technology that will help you do it more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. I was going to ask about some like terms to use, and I'm a big fan of looking for ways to reframe these types of things that we've been talking about for a long time, and changing up that phrase of from water conservation to water efficiency does reframe that into more of a positive mindset from historical record, right? So it does give that idea of like, we're going to do the best with what we have, as opposed to, well, we have less, we just gotta deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very different mindset when you frame it that way.
Yeah, it's less about limitation. It's more about how can we do our best? What's best practice? What's the best technology that can be leveraged here?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. I appreciate all the time that you've given us today and talking a little more deeply with this. And the article is very good. So if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely check it out in the February 2021 issue. Everybody who's watching, and we will see you next week with another video interview.
Thank you.